Welcome to Let's Roger That, everybody. I'm Gilles. Today, as you saw in my introduction, we're going to talk about how I indicate my vise on my milling machine. And just so you know, my vise was loose when I did that earlier. Yeah. The objective of this video is to show you 4 things that I've done in order to get my vise to indicate so precisely every single time. So let's briefly look over the 4 things that need to be done so that you can just put your vise on and then just tighten it down. Number 1, the T-slots have to be clean, deburred, and straight. Number 2, the inside part of your vise here where your nut or where the bolt goes in has to be filed down so that there are no burrs. Number 3, it's important to have T-nuts that extend past the surface of your T-slots. And number 4, you need some precision T-nuts. Now that I've taken you through the 4 things that need to be done in order to make your vise indicating repeatable, let's start by making precision T-nuts. Okay, before we make a T-nut, and because we're shooting for precision, we need to measure, take some really good measurement of all of these dimensions here. The width, the height of this, plus 1/4 of an inch, right? And it's good to look at some of the features that are there as well. So for example, here we can't assume that this is square. That means we'll have to make a chamfer on our T-nut at the bottom and over here as well. Now this part is chamfered on the T-slot, and so is this, so we don't have to worry about that. So now let's take some measurements. Okay, so first of all, let's go in here, get the width. I want to be as parallel as possible. Let's go to the bottom. That's the easiest way. All right, let's measure that. And on the caliper, we get 1 inch and 24.5 thousandths. All right. So the width of the top part of this T-slot. So that is, we'll call it 637 thousandths. All right. Okay, let's take our depth gauge. Just touch the bottom. Just like that. And check the measurements. And that is 820 thousandths. Now we need to measure the thickness of this T-slot. And we've got 300, we'll call it 389 thousandths. Now that I've measured the T-slots, it's probably worthwhile talking about this here. And what surface exactly is going to be the primary surface on which our T-nut will indicate, right? And the answer is this part right here. Not the bottom. Bottom is just a retainer for nut to move upward. But if we're nice and snug here, but yet sliding fit, should be fine, right? Now we measured this at 637 thousandths. So let's take some gauge blocks and measure what will actually fit, a sliding fit, but nice and snug. For those of you who are beginners and don't have a lot of tools yet, this is called a gauge block set. And like I said, we've got 637 thousandths in width for that T-slot. So let's look at the block set. We got say 500 thousandths, and with 137 that would equal to 637. Let's just give it say 2 thousandths in difference, and that should do a nice sliding fit. Now what you do, something else for newbies that like myself, we don't know a whole lot about this stuff. There's something called ringing the blocks. And what they mean by that is you take the blocks and you do this with them. You don't have to do anything. And just the precision fit will hold it together. So that's called ringing the blocks. So we're going to take this to that T-slot and see if it fits. Okay, so I'm here with my gauge blocks. And of course the T-nut's going to go in here and slide all the way in, right? So we want to make sure that everything fits. So put it in from the top just for fun. It slides, but there's no slack. You know, there's no wiggle room. And it'll slide all the way. I can feel some minor burrs probably on the edges of that T-slot. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to clean that up. But in essence, this fits. So I just want to make sure we're not going to have problems sliding that T-nut once it's made. Now to take care of this, here I've got a set of diamond sharpeners and by Easy Lap. Now there's a coarse, medium, fine, and then super fine, and these are absolutely fantastic. So if you don't own a set yet, very worthwhile doing if you're going to make tools, for example. Okay, so we're going to grab the fine. We're just going to run it gently. And I can feel the burrs now. And this is going to take care of it. These little files do a fantastic job. And I can feel them at the bottom part of the slot. And so I'm going to do the other side too. Now this is really not taking anything except for the burrs. But I can feel them as I go. So it's well worthwhile doing. Okay, great. And wipe that off. Don't want those diamond bits in my gauge block. So let's try again. Fits in. Nice. And now I don't feel any burrs at all. So that is just great. That's exactly what I want. I don't really want to go any tighter, although I could, because honestly, there's no need at this point. We just want to have a nice, clean fit. Okay, so I hope you're not here from my drawing skills, because you'd be sadly disappointed and you need a new hobby. But essentially, I've just made a rough diagram here of what we got. Here are all the measurements that I took at the mill. We've got a T-slot width of 637 thousandths. The bottom part of the T-nut's going to have or the slot has 1 inch 25 thousandths. The height of all this is of the bottom part is 431 thousandths, and then the thickness of the slot is 389 thousandths for a total of 820 thousandths. Now, when we move for the design of the T-nut itself, we have to make allowances for movement and ease of use, right? So we're going to take 10 thousandths of an inch from the width of the bottom part, and so now we have 1 inch and 15 thousandths. We already looked at the gauge blocks and decided I was going to take 635 thousandths, and it's moving, but it's snug. And then of course the remainder of the width is 190 thousandths on each side. Here the height of the T-slot at the bottom is 431. No need to struggle. We're going to make it 425 thousandths. The part that really matters, of course, is this part, the width, and then the height, of course, right? Now, here we have a height of 820 thousandths total. So we want that to extend higher because we want the vise to indicate on this T-nut. So we're going to make it at 1 inch 100 thousandths. And the thickness of this T-nut is just, that's up to you, but I'm going to go with 900 thousandths because I want as much contact of this face against the T-slot up here, right? Cut it in half, and usually I wouldn't do that, but in this particular case, just because of the orientation of the material that I had no choice. So as you can tell, there's 5 thousandths of an inch in difference between the two widths. So I'm going to take them to my surface grinder. Okay, so now I've got both of the critical sides ground down. I'm going to measure this with an actual micrometer and see where we are. We started at 1 inch 22 thousandths. Okay, let's continue. I've gone through all that trouble to surface grind these and make them identical so that I can mill the sides. And that way I can go the exact same depth, you know, get set up on my mill, and then make everything repeatable. And that's really the critical part. Once all of that is done to my satisfaction, then I'll carve out the various bevels in order to fit things properly. And at the end, we'll drill and tap some holes. So now I'm going to take them to the mill them down, and let me see here, bring this over here. So as far as the width goes here, in order to get to the measure or the width of this that I want, I need to take 190 thousandths off. I'm only going to take 185 thousandths off and leave 5 thousandths to take it back to the surface grinder, and then I will regrind these surfaces here in order to keep them as precise as possible. So here we go. Just doing a quick sanity check here, and the original width, of course, was 1 inch and 15 thousandths. We're at basically 864 thousandths. Just did the calculations, And that's exactly where I should be. So that is really good. So now I can proceed and take off the remaining 35 thousandths and then switch to the other side. Okay, I've got the T-nuts to the appropriate depth of cut so that I can still work with them on the surface grinder. Now I'm going to put chamfers on these edges at the top, and then I'll reverse them and put them at the bottom as well. These are 30 thousandths of an inch. Yeah, and that'll be perfect because that'll clear those corners. Okay, back at the surface grinder, I've got the parts in the vise. Everything is on the machine and dialed in. So now I've got to take 5 thousandths of an inch on this side and then flip everything around and take 5 thousandths on the other side. The grinding is done, and I hit my target within 1/10 of 1/1000th of an inch. I think that's close enough. And now we have to take this and drill and tap some holes for our bolts. Let's do it. Okay, so the parts are machined, and if you notice here, the surface is not quite as smooth on these sides, simply because I've had to file them down. Now, once you get started, you'll find that these slots are not perfectly even, right? So here, it's kind of, I'm having to sort of tilt the unit in order to get it to slide across. This side of these slots are nice and loose, and that's because these sides here were a little snug. Now, when you do all this, you start the process of adjusting, do not mess with this. You've already worked that out, right? Yes, it's rubbing, but that's normal because you've got a nice tight tolerance. Now, as long as you've taken all the burrs out of here along the whole track, you'll be fine. So what you'll need to adjust is probably the bottom and these sides here, because you can't get to the casting on the inside, and it's fairly smooth but perfect. So once you get it to that point where it slides nice and neat, then you're done with this part. So now that I've got my T-nuts fitting in the mill, it's important for me to take the other steps. And one of those is to make sure that the surface on my vise at the rear parts of this tab are nice and flat. See this, as you can tell here, the casting is pretty rough. So I'm gonna file that down until it's perfectly smooth. One of the things that I realized is that my T-nuts don't fit in here. So I'll have to mark where it meets the top end of the table, and then figure what final width is here, and then mill that down. Okay, so this is the very end before we do the tryout. And I should remind everyone that if you're going to chase tents in any kind of machining, deburring is very, very important. So I highly recommend these little diamond files because the last bit of work and adjustment is all file work. Now, I didn't demonstrate that. It's a no-brainer. But please, like if you're going to do this, be patient. 1/1000th at a time. Measure, file, you know. Even though I've got a surface grinder, I did extensive amount of filing on these. So let's go to the mill and try them out. Okay, let's put these in. Nice. Okay, here's the left one. All right, let's see if it fits nice and tight. So push that in. Okay, great. I've set it on 15/1000ths. Remember, these are increments of 5/10ths of 1/1000th. So all I did is put the T-nuts in, press it against forward, and let's see what happens. So over 4 inches, I've got almost 2/1000ths of an inch that I'm off. So given that this sticks out a little more, I'm going to take off this 2/1000. I'm going to take off 1/1000th of an inch on the bottom part of this eyelet, shall I call it? And I'll be back. Okay, I did a little tiny bit of filing on one of the T-nuts, the one that indicate against the vise. And now let's try this out and see what happens. So, sorry, my arm. Okay, so bring the indicator down out here, tie that in. Kind of hard working around that camera. I'm gonna have to figure out a better way to do this. I need to bring it down a touch more. Okay. See if I can get it 15 here. All right. Let's see what we got. All I've done is press it forward. Okay, here we go. Okay, so over 4 inches, we've got about, not quite 1/1000th, but almost, right? So so it increased on its way here. Little tap. I mean, we're talking about 1/1000th here, right? Okay. Reset the dial. Hard to see for me here. Okay. Okay, so what do we got? We've got, well, pretty well like 0. So that's how easy it is to get this to be repeatable. It takes work, don't get me wrong. This will take about a day out of your life, but in the end, if you do this, of course, you'll save yourself a whole lot of time in the future. All right, so let me pull this back, put it back again, and see, we're right back on 15. So it's just a no-brainer. It takes a little bit of time, but well worth it. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you do, please like and subscribe. I appreciate your viewership. And please shoot me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Take care. Bye-bye.